Welcome back to Off Record On Point, the workplace culture podcast with that all-important twist. I'm Julia Linehan, founder and CEO of The Digital Voice.
And I'm Kasey Long. Today, we're joined by Paul Evans, founder and consultant CMO of 6040 Marketing. Remember to check out the description for our usual list of resources to keep the conversation going. Here's what's coming up on this episode.
Kind of the truth is that everybody should be a marketer, right? Everybody is a marketer as a custodian of the way that the brand business functions, communicates, sets pricing, addresses its customers, delivers a promotion, sets its commercialization and, and go to market and distribution strategy and so on like that. That's all marketing.
Does marketing equal communications, or are they two separate and very distinct areas?
And actually, marketing needs rebranding. It really does. I think it's kind of fundamentally lost its way. Fundamentally, it kind of just needs to address that hard truth that it's got lost.
Would you say Adtech business brands are more or less vanilla than others?
I think you only have to look at the Loomiscape, let's say, and see how many Adtech businesses are called Ad something or something Ad. That's just ridiculous.
Over his career, Paul has been at the front line of redefining marketing, and today's episode is all about taking marketing from bland to blooming. Julia, what's in store?
Well, it's always one of the hardest jobs to make marketing work and to make it count, and certainly to try not to have it be bland and to make it bloom. I always think of, when you ask people, what was the last ad that popped for you that was memorable? One of them you could think about Budweiser's "What's Up" from 1992. Let me never do that again. My favorite was Reebok's "Belly Gonna Get You," or the not my favorite was Tango's "Slaphead," where I had a particularly large forehead when I was at school, and I can't tell you the amount of times that my forehead was slapped. But these are all really memorable, and because ultimately that's what you're trying to achieve. But marketing is hard, and making marketing great is even harder. Now we've got extra layers of complexity. Let's take AI. 36% of marketers still aren't using AI. Those that are using AI can often be called out for it for negative reasons, or it's just not making the same impact. Throw into the mix the extra demands on marketers for, I've got to be responsible, sustainable, inclusive. It is a huge challenge. But the man on our hot seat today, Paul Evans, is here to make it super easy and super clear. So welcome, Paul.
Hello, Paul.
That was quite a billing. Thanks.
You're welcome. So we got a challenge for you first, Paul. In under a minute, can you introduce yourself and share your journey?
Let's see if we can do this. Anybody got a stopwatch?
Oh, yeah, we're timing you.
So I would say I'm a 2-decade marketer. Having been kind of client side at brands like Vodafone and Xbox. I'm a passionate marketer, but also a media specialist, and have kind of fallen in love with this industry actually, and tried to give back to it as much as I can in lots of different ways. And kind of latterly, I've done that through my consulting work. So as you guys said, I'm like a fractional CMO working for Adtech and media businesses, helping them with their value proposition and positioning in what is a smorgasbord of kind of Adtech businesses out there. They all look the same, bless them.
So a lot of the roles you've had, there's almost been a blurring of lines between marketing and communications. And we're going to hit it hard with the first question of, does marketing equal communications, or are they two separate and very distinct areas?
Fundamentally, kind of marketing's been diluted down over time and diluted down to communications. And there's so many reasons and drivers for that. We kind of where marketing is right now. We know the CMO role is shortest tenure, under 24 months, I think, something like that. Least trusted of the C-suite, and a lot of that comes down to the way that CMOs and marketing functions kind of position themselves. Somebody said to me the other day, actually, because we was kind of having this conversation about marketing, and kind of how valid it is as a term, as a function. And almost this person said to me that like marketing needs repositioning, which is kind of interesting in the sense that like marketing is about positioning. It's part of that's part of a core strategic choice when you kind of delivering kind of marketing activity or marketing thinking. And actually, yeah, marketing needs rebranding. It really does. I think it's kind of fundamentally lost its way. Fundamentally, it kind of just needs to address that hard truth that it's got lost within an ether of, you know, agendas within the ecosystem, the industry around like what is marketing? Is it growth? Is it performance and short and long term? And is it comms? When ultimately, and I just recently did last year the mini MBA, the Mark Ritson course, if you guys know it, and it was great. So it was quite validating that it was a refresh, or it felt like a refresh, kind of going through it again. Like I wasn't learning new stuff again. It was just being reminded. I was being reminded of the strategic discipline that marketing inherently has as a function, going back to kind of like the core problem that you're trying to solve and who you need to address, how you segment and find that right audience to project your business solution to. And it is a business growth function. That's one of the fundamental things about marketing, is that it really isn't just about comms. It is about pricing and product and distribution, as well as communication and advertising and so on like that. So you get to a point where really so much of marketing now is just seen as comms and advertising, and critically the core of it is overlooked, and almost deliberately by a lot of marketers. I think a lot of marketers are just like uncomfortable talking about pricing, and it's like pricing is one of your like most effective weapons in terms of growing margin and profitability and revenue, that it kind of just seems foolish to overlook it now.
If anything, marketing should be even more involved for all those reasons and more. And I wonder, Paul, if just from your general knowledge or on this course, do you think marketing is a core leadership business growth function, and why in the couple ad tech startups you've gotten to work with, those value propositions should be the very first thing that they focus on and create? Is it to support all those things you just mentioned, or what do you think?
That's a leading the witness question, which is awesome, because you know the answer. There's that management consultant. I'll kind of throw in some quotes as we go through the conversation, I think. So it is one of kind of like those like favorite quotes. Peter Drucker talks about marketing and innovation being like the core business functions, the only business functions, right? And that's not to diminish kind of finance or HR or other essential parts of the business, but it's saying where you create value, where you create growth, lies within those two aspects, those two capabilities. And in doing so, he's referring to marketing not in communications, but he's referring to it in a sense of identifying customer value and needs and addressing it through the use of all, the range of levers that a marketer should have available to them if they are so not inclined, that's the wrong word, but if they've grounded their role and their capability in the right way, right? If they've kind of thought about marketing and they're like what I would call like a capital M marketer, not a lower M coloring in department kind of marketer. If they're thinking about marketing in a real commercial sense, as you framed it, as a business growth driving function, then absolutely, that's the role that it should play within a business. And kind of leading that into the value proposition work that I've done then over the past 4 years for Adtech and media businesses. And I didn't happen to set out to do like a consulting business that focused on value proposition and positioning. It just happened to be naturally where I found both problems and also I was quite comfortable in delivering the solutions as well for different businesses. But that, as core DNA for any business. And within your question was also a kind of like a cadence aspect about when you should really define your value proposition, because it's that core DNA, because it sets the direction of the business. And even though business goes through versions, I talk about within my consulting work about versioning, and that inevitably businesses do mature, product market fit gets out of whack deliberately and accidentally. But businesses go through versions, but it's still on a trajectory set by that core DNA of what the business stands for, the market opportunity that it's addressing, segment, audience, product solution, and so on like
Sticking to your North Stars then.
Yeah, I'm curious though, because you mentioned that you didn't mean in the last 4 years to focus much more on the ad tech businesses. Is it? Do you think that the ad tech businesses are more open to having their marketing redefined? They're open to new ideas. They're open to things that are going to help them elevate. And what is it that, if you could pick one or two things that's going to give some guidance on how you elevate your marketing, what is it?
So I wouldn't say particularly the industry is open to marketing, and in the way that I kind of define it and describe it, right? And I do think I've been lucky enough to come across some great clients over that 4 years, who have either intuitively seen it that way or have worked with me to address those gaps within their business and to help them kind of version their business with better, a stronger value proposition. That kind of product market fit thing being out of whack. What I mean by that is that, the market is obviously ever evolving, and businesses might need to kind of realign themselves with the market, or indeed if the business is an innovative business and has kind of, gone forwards on product, it needs to kind of readdress the market in a different way to kind of project that solution in the right way to the market. So
Are there one or two things that you go, do this is going to elevate your marketing?
Marketing is balance. And if you think about kind of where marketing is out of balance at the moment, with an emphasis, let's just pick on one thing. Let's pick on performance marketing, right? And that the idea that marketing is only about being accountable to purchase in the short term, as an example. That's just craziness. And marketers are kind of in that frame, or indeed kind of incentives drive behaviors ultimately, right? So if their role and their incentives around that role are aligned to that goal, then absolutely that's going to be what they're going to do. That's their behaviors. So yeah, where you need to get to is this kind of better position of balance ultimately, to kind of, to bring back within that context the longer term thinking, the brand building thinking, the equity driving thinking. There's a great rule within marketing called the 95-5 rule, if you've ever come across it.
I don't think so.
So
Hit us with it.
It's evidence based. So it's researched and relatively proven. I'll kind of go with
relatively.
that. Yeah,
asterisk.
relatively proven. Yeah. And so it comes from the B2B Marketing Institute, and they talk about so broadly any brands, any business, only 5% of their potential buyers are in market right now. The other 95% are not in market. They're not considering. They're not kind of, they're not in that point of considering to purchase, in effect. And we know those kind of cycles of purchase within B2B, they can be quite extensive. But that means that when your communications or your positioning is solely focused on short term and price and conversion, you're not really addressing the needs, the predisposition, the bias driving work that you need to do to make people aware of your brand and business and what it stands for, so that they're available to be communicated to in the future when they are ready to purchase. It's kind of like it's simple stuff in terms of just addressing that balance of needs in your kind of marketing function that just seem lost.
I would like to, speaking of things being lost or maybe not blooming enough, like the theme of this episode, you obviously have loads of experience, like we mentioned, working with different ad tech businesses. On the whole, and I know how me and Julia feel about this because we've got a specific point of view, would you say ad tech business brands are more or less vanilla than others?
I think you only have to look at the Lumascape, let's say, and see how many ad tech businesses are called ad something or something ad, and you're like, fucking hell, that's just ridiculous.
I think at one point in the company we were representing about 4 of them.
Really? It's like, that's crazy, right? When naming is, I've done brand naming for a few businesses within the last 4 years, and it was quite cool.
That's
and
wild.
And one of them was called Effective, spelt with an A, ended with TV, and it's pretty bland in and of itself. And the business was nothing to do with TV, and they were often mistaken for kind of being present with it. Yeah, exactly, within that kind of category space. And actually, the CEO, a great guy called Patrick Johnson, went with my project name. So this wasn't meant to be the name of the business, but he kind of went with it, and we went with Hybrid Theory. And Hybrid Theory, 3 years later, got acquired by Azerion. Now, I'm not saying naming has driven the M&A outcome, the acquisition outcome, but undoubtedly Patrick, and on a number of occasions, kind of told me that having renamed, but also, we did a repositioning work for the business as well in terms of its look and feel, the distinctive assets that kind of go with rebranding and positioning and so on like that, led to it being a more distinctive and identifiable business within the ecosystem. It stood out a fucking mile in really, really good ways. It was seen as progressive and modern and different. People loved working for it in terms of what it stood for within the industry. These are fundamental things that can change the trajectory of your business, the culture of your business, which is so, so important as well.
It's really interesting because it's one of my bugbears is anything vanilla. Kasey, you just mentioned vanilla in terms of brands, but it's driving me insane that people think it's okay to produce ChatGPT fueled content that it smacks of vanilla a mile off. And I think I see quite a few red flags, and that even goes down like to naming conventions of companies. Do you think there's any red flags that people need to, these are the ones that Paul Evans would say, avoid these at your peril, whether it comes to content or creative?
When AI kind of came on the scene, generative AI kind of came on the scene over the last 18 months or so, immediately you started looking at what you still require a smart, intelligent, creative human brain driving the prompts, driving the questions, driving that outcome in the same way that you would have done previously. You've just got this tool now which enables fast, smart outputs. And so I use it to kind of get me started. Like if I'm writing a thought leadership piece, don't tell my clients. If I'm writing a thought leadership piece, I might use Gen AI to give me something to work from, but then I'd spend a load of time still nuancing it, crafting it, because I haven't yet got to that one time prompt in and out the other side with something which is perfect.
It's still not going to sound like you and your tone of voice and how you would say it.
Yeah. And I'm sure it will get there in the future, and the future is not going to be very far off. So I think the red flag is don't see it as a panacea. See it as a tool for what it is. Use it accordingly. So instruct it, but you instruct it. You put in the hard yards on prompts, on questioning, on the specificity of language to get to that great outcome. I have another kind of phrase. This is quote number 2. This one's actually me. I'm quoting myself, which is kind of interesting. That language is the transference of energy, like from sender to receiver. And I talk about language as assets within the work that I do, within value propositions, which are inherently words. You get into some kind of visual concepts, but largely language. And that thought and craft that goes into it is so important in terms of that transference of energy, that meaning which you imply with those carefully chosen words. I think it goes through and follows through on prompts and on Gen AI instructions.
I love it. So that was sort of like actually what to use and green flags to adopt slightly with utilizing AI in specific ways and thinking more creatively about language and words. Are there any other things that you think marketers should be doing or focusing on more to just have that more like strategic, colorful, distinctive marketing all at once?
I think the great marketers are the ones that can think intuitively but evidence-based, that can harness creativity and data points and logic and reason and bring those together and be really, really comfortable with that. I think there's a lot of people out there that, just want to do nice work, let's call it, right? Inherently creative work, and that's kind of fine. But if there's no logical rigor driving that output, then it just feels like the wrong thing.
I think as well, if there's got to have two things really. You can say creatives create nice creatives or nice marketing. Well, they've also, right at the heart of it, has now got to have purpose. And I think it's so important right at the start of the value proposition, not yet for the sake of it purpose, because I said at the start, marketing just got harder because it's this layer of responsible marketing, and it has to have be responsible, but it also has to have purpose, and it has to have values that are in sync with your own company. At what point do you layer those in? Is that just right at the start of the process when you start your business, or can it be changed, adapted, evolved, the purpose of your marketing?
So purpose is a really interesting one, and there's lots of people who try to say it's not valuable as part of positioning and value proposition, and there are, and maybe there's some legitimacy to that in a sense as, there are businesses that have got distracted by it and have tried to force purpose into, I don't know, like it's a toilet cleaner, and what kind of purpose does that have other than kind of product efficacy, which is like, yeah, I just need it to work. I don't need it to change the world. And I think that's maybe the point in terms of reflecting on purpose a little bit, that it doesn't have to be about changing the world in a sense of ESG kind of changing the world and environment and social and so on like that. IKEA have a great vision statement, which is about democratizing and making furniture accessible. I think they call it the everyday people, which is kind of a really nice expression in terms of I think you get from that kind of who it's intended for.
That humanness.
Yeah, and it's not solving kind of world hunger, but it's doing something noble.
They're helping people build homes. Like, it's a lovely, cozy kind of thought.
It feels right, absolutely. So, in the context of purpose, like businesses like Patagonia get rolled out all the time, but inherently it still feels like an outlier in terms of a business that has really adopted purpose at the heart of what it stands for, and then driven that through strategy and activation, like through its P&L. It's like quite incredible how that business has adopted it. But I kind of think a business like Nike, there we go, Nike again, whose mission is all about the athlete, and that as a purpose drives their business to create and innovate and inspire in an incredible way, because there's a truth at the very beginning of their business which says this is what we stand for, this is what we're all about. Now, I was really lucky enough to work with Nike over in China when I was at Mindshare, and I've never come across a business like it where the brand and the employee culture are so intrinsically linked, and like you cannot separate the two. They didn't need to brief their agencies in the experience that I had with them. Everybody just bleeds Nike and what ultimately the brand is trying to create and do. And so for me, purpose can be a little bit what's the word? Misastribed. I can't even say the word.
You can make up words.
Yeah, we'll make up a word. Misapplied. We'll go with that one. And I think it can drive outward customer value in the way that Nike could clearly have done over decades. If you've ever read Shoe Dog, the founder's book, he tells that story incredibly well. But there's this really powerful outcome of having purpose embedded within your value proposition, because your value proposition is intended to address all stakeholders, not just customers, including investors, including the wider market, but also employees and teams. And kind of people want to turn up and do the right thing, and that right thing might not necessarily be about sustainability or diversity purely.
Can I ask you something then, Paul? Because the role of it's really interesting, isn't it, recently that Starbucks has just dropped its global CMO role, and about 2/3 of Fortune 500 brands no longer have a CMO. But I think you might be onto something there, because you said about Nike that it's almost intrinsically runs throughout the veins of the whole company. Is it better now for companies that have, like Starbucks is now doing regional CEOs that take on that role? But I'm not saying eradicate CMOs, but if it's more of the company-wide has a global brand creative approach that everybody lives and breathes this, is that why there's a shift away? And do you disagree with it? And that damn fire, they should not be getting rid of CMOs? Or is it just that CMOs need to sell the story to the internal teams and make them their voices?
I think when it's done well, potentially that could be one of the unfortunate outcomes. It's because marketing is inherently business, going back to the Drucker quote, right? And when it's done brilliantly, it should feel like electricity and oxygen. It should be invisible. And kind of the truth is that everybody should be a marketer, right? Everybody is a marketer as a custodian of the way that the brand business functions, communicates, sets pricing, addresses its customers, delivers a promotion, sets its commercialization and go to market and distribution strategy and so on like that. That's all marketing. Like it's, you very rarely get into a function. It would have to be like incredibly back office, where it doesn't have to act in the way that the brand DNA kind of requires it to. So yeah, and I think that is one potential kind of side effect. When there's brilliant brands and marketers out there, maybe that's it. But you'd have to argue that because there's so much change in the world, and because brands need to remain current, Nike, it's responding continuously in an organic way to how customers, athletes change, their demands change over time, how technology drives changes in product, shoe, trainer capabilities. Marketers are, the guardians of the way the business breathes, going back to that kind of oxygen metaphor, that inhale in and exhale out of a way a business operates. I see that as a marketer's kind of role and stewardship. I feel so lucky on the one hand to have done 20 odd years of marketing and to be a marketer and to champion what marketing stands for. But going back to that kind of first question around like where it is right now, I just can't help but think it's lost that battle. Maybe like if I wasn't positioning myself as a CMO, but instead I was a fractional chief growth officer. Growth is one of those bits of language.
Brand creative leader.
Yeah, like whatever it might be that kind of works to show value. Marketing kind of feels as though it doesn't add value, accountable value, and it's the accountability thing, which I think is critical to that,
Well, we could scrap the rest of the questions and let's workshop your new job title then, Paul, instead. No, I'm obviously kidding, but I did want to circle back earlier because I know a couple times the element of responsible marketing, DE&I, sustainability, we've mentioned it, and responsible marketing kind of encapsulates all of that, including data compliance, ESG, the whole lot. What do you think marketers, we know we're not maybe changing the world, some of us are, some aren't, but what do you recommend marketers do to hit the mark on all these areas, and not in a tick box exercise, we've hit the mark way, but in like an authentic, like they're doing the work that they should be doing, being responsible marketers?
There's so much inertia around sustainability and what to do about it. And I think largely that inertia is driven by a measurement agenda, and there's this instinctive need, indeed, like a policy driven, a legislative need to measure carbon emissions or ESG performance within a business. But as I was reading today, I won't quote the person, but I'll steal the quote anyway, which because invariably the legacy quote is you manage what you measure, right? But actually there's a ton of businesses out there that are going backwards on their sustainability commitments, and they're measuring the fuck out of it. And so really it's a lot about taking action. It's a lot about knowing what that right North Star and purpose is, and just following through on that. And carbon emissions is such a great example of that, I think. So we've had 28 COPs, right? COP 28 just happened. 28 years of government and policy and science-based evidence on like lots of stick on why we should be doing what we're doing. And we're falling behind the targets that our planet is kind of setting for us. Yeah, that requires for us to deliver the kind of change that we need. And this isn't about marketing change or anything like that, or behavioral change. This is about like fundamentally surviving to a certain extent as the human race, right? So it's a big issue. And we're not doing the right thing. Ultimately, I think we've been distracted by the wrong incentives. And I think we've kind of, if I get back to where the question might have been around responsibility, I think if you know what the right thing to do is, follow through on it. Just follow through on it with some purity and some conviction.
Yeah.
Bit of conviction. Yeah, 100%.
With your data compliance, with your inclusion and all the rest of it.
If we're talking about conviction, and I got to be honest, and I'm completely shoehorning this in because we couldn't wait to ask you. Paul Evans, you ran the marathon dressed as a knight. You got a world record for it. What the actual fuck what gave you the idea? Made you think the running? I've seen the picture. I've seen the boots you wore. What were you thinking? How much did it hurt? And did it change it? I've run the marathon as well, but dressed in normal marathon running attire, I'd like to say, because I'm not insane. So did it change something for you?
It was well shoehorned in, like with the segue of conviction. That was nicely done.
Thank you very much.
And I think ultimately it did take some insanity and perseverance to kind of see it through. The training runs I did wearing those knee-high leather boots around Bushy Park in Richmond.
Oh my gosh.
Where I live. Yeah, they were.
I've got to see the photos now.
It sounds more deviant than it is, Kasey. It was when it went with the night attire, it made sense. Running around Bushy Park with just knee-high boots.
I was interviewed by BBC on the morning of the marathon, and the interviewer was like, "I love your boots." And I was like, showed my legs. Actually, worked it quite well, I think.
You'd think Nike would have sent you out with a custom little...
Given how much you talked about them today, they might well
do
that.
So the Guinness World Record thing, I actually got a public ballot entry And which is like, so normally that kind of means you can just you take no pressure, you don't have to raise any money, you just go and enjoy the race, blah, blah, blah. And for whatever reason, I kind of like challenges, and I've raised money for charity over the last kind of couple of decades, a little bit sporadically. I've done things like climbing Kilimanjaro and cycling from London to Paris, and I've run up China's tallest skyscraper, kind of mad stuff like that, right? I've done the marathon before in my 30s, and it was good, and I kind of had this itch to do it again. And when I got the public ballot through the end of 22, I was like, awesome. And my kid is diagnosed autistic. So the diversity and inclusion kind of part of responsible within our industry is quite meaningful and important to me. And the charity Ambitious About Autism is one that I support massively and have raised money before. And I kind of put two and two together here in my own way. Yeah, in there's an expression, it takes three to tango. And I think the kind of third bit was actually I thought I'd go for a Guinness World Record to try and raise more money. And so I did a little bit of research on it. The marathon was on St. George's Day, my wife's birthday. Her middle name is Georgina, named after St. George. And I kind of thought, yeah, maybe I could set a record to run the marathon dressed as a knight, which was ultimately the thing. The Guinness World Record guys are pretty tight on the rules and regs, so it's not a fun run or anything like that. So they set the criteria in terms of running with a sword and a shield, the whole outfit, the cape.
Oh my gosh.
Chainmail. There was chainmail, Kasey.
No horse, apparently, though, to help you run the race.
No. And yeah, these knee-high leather boots, they were from ASOS, women's boots, $39.99. Beautiful. There was no cushioning at all.
Oh, I saw because you posted on our Adtech chat group, the blisters afterwards, and I think we all winced, and we all donated a little bit more. So huge credit to you, and well done, Paul. You're insane, but proud it raised for such an important cause. I'm aware of time, and you're not going to get away with it. You've got to do my quickfire round.
Brace yourself.
And this means you have to answer the first thing that comes into your head. Bish, bash, bosh, flying around. Paul Evans, are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
Question 1. To thrive and survive as a marketer, you've got to have...
balance.
Perfect.
Emotion and logic, short and long term, all of that good stuff.
Balance is key.
Nice.
My 3 top tips to make your marketing pop are...
differentiate, absolutely. I think most people know what that is. Be distinctive, like just emotionally and creatively be distinctive. And I would say challenge norms and paradigms. I love zigging when everybody else is zagging.
Love that. We love a bit squiggly in whichever direction. Now, I think I might know the answer to this. My favorite ad campaign ever is sponsored by Nike.
Yeah, sort of anything by Nike, actually, to be honest. I do actually love Paul Smith as well, but the Nike campaign, the best one that I ever came across was Dream Crazy, the one with Colin Kaepernick, which is grounded in his life-changing moment of, addressing racism in the NFL. Was just a brilliant piece of communication. It's pretty gets you every time.
Good one to look out for. Finish this sentence. The biggest mistake creative marketers can make is
not focusing on outcomes, not focusing on accountability.
Perfect. Good advice.
If it's creative for creative sake, that kind of thing.
I think so. The next one, the campaign or idea I wish I'd had.
No, but this is so bad now. It's a brand.
It's going to be Nike. It's going to be Nike.
Because going back to like everything that I've said about them, right? Just it's the invention of a brand with so much substance and longevity as Nike.
Here's another one. Do you prefer advertising pre-AI or post-AI?
I wouldn't say I've seen much difference right now. So I'm going to kind of just take AI out of the equation, although I have a fear, I guess, that it will be misused going into the future, and we will end up with kind of just bland vanilla crap out there. I kind of think This is going off the quickfire thing, isn't it?
I didn't want to pull you up on it. Go with it, Paul.
Apply rigor to advertising in the way that we should be doing. Like, really understand the customer need, communicate it brilliantly, distinctively, and with differentiation. As we're just saying, do it differently, and follow those rules. It doesn't matter what tool you use. If you follow the right kind of rules around it, the right principles, then you'll come out with some great work. I'm convinced of that.
Thank you so much, Paul. You survived the quickfire round. There's so many takeaways and points there. And I must admit, I've written some of them down, mainly because I might steal some of them. But what Paul said is that marketing does need to find its way. It is about finding the right audience, looking to the long term, taking in mind the 95-5 rule, follow it. If you don't know about it, look it up. Be aware of vanilla. Don't get sucked into something being easy isn't necessarily right or of any value. Feel marketing like it's electricity and like it's breathing, and get your teams to feel your own values, your own brand like it's electricity and like it's breathing. I love that. Making your company the custodian of your brand. They're your biggest mouthpiece. They're your champions, your cheerleaders. Use them and make them really make your marketing pop from within every element of your company. So that's my roundup. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul. That is a wrap on this episode. But as always, there's far more to this conversation. So don't forget, you can check out our website for more reading and resources. Thank you for joining us, Paul.
More than happy to. I hope my monologues were palatable.
They were amazing.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Off Record On Point. Join us again next time for another confession from an industry game changer. But until then, I'm Julia Linehan.
And I'm Kasey Long. Enjoyed the conversation? Reach out and let us know by rating and reviewing on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to follow to never miss an episode.
You can always stay connected with us at www.thedigitalvoice.co.uk and, of course, across all our social platforms. Just look out for The Digital Voice.
Join us again next time for another undercover industry deep dive, all off record, all on point.